My name is Lady Dr. Price, and welcome back to my channel, where we talk about health and wellness so we can lead by example. So today I am doing a book review. This book I had read over my social media break. I did like a 7-week social media break over the end of the year. And so this book is Vegucation Over Medication by Dr. Bobby Price. And just to kind of give you a little bit about him, if you don't know about Dr. Price, so he has his own social media and YouTube and everything. We are not related at all, just so that you know. I have met him twice. Actually, I met him once at his tour. I volunteered for his tour called Heal My People tour. It was a couple years ago with him and Stefan Speaks, which was phenomenal. And then I also met him at InvestFest. If you don't know about any of these things, please look them up, Google them. They are amazing events put on by amazing people. So to give a little bit about Dr. Bobby Price, he's a pharmacist, so he's a doctor of pharmacy, and exercise physiologist, chemist, plant-based nutritionist, and herbalist. So yeah, he's got quite a bit of thing, and he also had worked with the FDA at one point as well. So for how long I don't know, but I do remember learning about that. So to kind of give a little bit about the book, there's some things that I agree with, some things that I disagree with, which is cool. But you know, when I do these reviews, I want to give like my whole perspective on it. I try not to just give fully glowing reviews unless, you know, the book is just utterly amazing and I have nothing else to say about it. But I try to give as honest a review as I can. And I always like to encourage people to read. So that's also part of the reason why I'm doing this, because if we're going to learn to lead by example, we have to learn. So to kind of get into the book without further ado, as far as me like agreeing and disagreeing with some things, I would recommend people read this book, particularly people who kind of need a bit of a kickstart or know nothing about health or know nothing about like a healthy diet. I think it's a good book to start with. I do think also people in healthcare should read this book as well. Now, like me, I do believe you're going to disagree with some things as well. However, I think that it's important to read things that you may disagree with, especially again for learning's sake, because you know, a lot of times you get inundated and taught a specific route, but then you don't consider other things as well that's going to affect not only your health, but your patient's health. So regardless of what you disagree with, I think if you're in healthcare, you should read this book. It's got some gems in it. It's got some interesting information. In the very least, it will provoke you, as it has provoked me, to look some things up. To look up some studies or whatever, learn a little bit more about different topics that he had covered. So, yeah, I would recommend this book. But yes, Vegucation Over Medication, I have my notes here, so I'm going to kind of go over those as well. So in this book, he discusses like the core issue in American healthcare, especially with, you know, I should say, our diet and lifestyle habits in our culture, because it's an issue. Obesity and, you know, overweight people, like it's an issue in this country, of course. Like most of us know that, if not all of us at this point. I believe I had looked up the statistics before I did this video, and it was about 73 to 74% of Americans are overweight or obese. And yes, that's according to the CDC. You can go look it up. That almost 3 in 4 people that you'll meet in this country are overweight or obese. I believe it was around, 41% were obese specifically, And in children, it was nearly 20% of children and adolescents were overweight or obese. So, just to kind of give a framework of the issue, it is a problem, um, and a problem that is rooted greatly in our diet and lifestyle. Throughout the book, he actually references the American diet as, the standard American diet or the SAD diet, because that's literally the acronym for it. And it is sad because of the outcomes that it has created over time. He outlined some of the lessons that he learned first when he had traveled to Okinawa, Japan, and India. He has done some research over there. As far as I understand, I remember listening to some interviews with him, and he kind of talked a little bit more about it. But he had learned some things in their diets, right? In particular, and choices like not eating until you were full, but until you were satisfied, which is big for a lot of people because I believe that a lot of people don't realize that you don't eat until you're stuffed. That's not healthy. It's not a good thing. You should eat until you're satisfied, until, your body tells you, okay, that's enough calories for me to do what I got to do, kind of thing. And there are a lot of people who don't have that sense anymore. I've learned, at least when you like hear different things, different interviews and what have you, there's a lot of people that don't have that sensation. And I think it's because they override it so often. I mean, if you're constantly eating until you're stuffed, a lot of times you don't know where that bar lies. So that was interesting, as well as their diet habits as far as eating primarily plant-based meals. Not necessarily all the time vegan, but primarily plant-based. So Dr. Bobby Price is a vegan, and he primarily focuses as well on eating to live, as he talks in the book, instead of eating to die. Like, what is the culture? That's the culture in this country, unfortunately. So me personally, I can't say that I am an advocate for everybody to be vegan. I do think that it's important to eat for your own individual health. As I do currently, I am ovo-vegan. I just made that transition this year. I had been vegan before, but yeah, I literally changed my diet, which I'll do a video on that, but I changed my diet depending on what my body needs instead of a fad, right? So being ovo-vegan, that means that I still eat eggs, I don't eat meat, and I don't eat dairy. I still even eat honey. So I'm not necessarily vegan because I think that it's wrong to eat chicken. However, for my body, this is what has been working. Back to the book. So he outlines the lessons that he learned in these places. So for example, he states that meat and dairy comprises about 3% of their diet in Okinawa versus 69% in the SAD diet, or the standard American diet. He stresses that the importance of eating to live is a culture, right? So in Okinawa, it's more of a culture of eating to live versus here. Now, is that changing? Yes. He talks about that in the sense that, there's a lot more fast food options there now. I have heard several times that, KFC is very, very popular in Japan. So that's changing with the westernization of the East, which is very, very unfortunate. And they're getting more health problems and becoming more overweight as a result. So there's that. He also addresses the importance of healthcare professionals being vegucated, which, again, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, that it's important to read stuff like this because in medicine, we don't learn about the importance of diets, the importance of nutrition, as well as we should, in my opinion. And the reason why I say that is because I mean, I went through medical school and the whole process. I think in school, I think we only did like maybe 2 or 3 lectures on nutrition and vitamins and what have you. And then we also had an elective available in fourth year for nutrition, which is great, but we only had one elective in one hospital. And out of all the hospitals that my school was affiliated with, and once that hospital closed down, that was gone. So I couldn't even sign up for the elective because it was full every time you checked. So obviously the interest is there, but the resources aren't necessarily provided. So that's getting a little bit better now with the introduction and the increased popularity in lifestyle medicine and culinary medicine. But it is at least getting better. But it takes the community of medicine quite a while to change. So we're working on it. Another pertinent point that he had pointed out in the book was the reductionist approach in modern medicine, just in the sense that we address parts in conventional medicine over the whole person. And again, this is being changed a little bit. The culture is slowly changing with the introduction of lifestyle medicine and its 6 pillars, which is a beautiful thing, but I can't disagree with him on that. I very much agree that I believe that conventional medicine is too reductionist, that we need way more interplay with the different specialties. The different specialties need to have more education on looking at the person as a whole. Like, as an example, as a nephrologist, you really shouldn't just be looking at the kidneys, like, just being perfectly honest. I know, like, that's your specialty. However, you're not treating kidneys. You're treating a person. So having that mindset shift and that shift in the culture of medicine, I think, is very important, because when you are just treating one system and not taking the whole ecosystem into account, then you end up with all kinds of imbalances and a person who's not truly healing but just being treated. And then the thing is too, right, even with the reductionist model, it leads to a more sick care model, because again, you are focusing more on the pound of pharmaceutical treatment versus the ounce of lifestyle prevention. Let's see, he also talks about how we need to do better to differentiate garbage food, or what we call junk food, from real food. He states, which I thought was a great quote, but he talked about how there is no such thing as junk food, which I wouldn't doubt was a marketing ploy, but there's no such thing as junk food, right? You either have junk or you have food. The two don't go together. So if you're eating poison, it's still poison. It's not food. But making that differentiation mentally is very important, so that we're not going in, because I remember learning, stick to the perimeter of the store when you go grocery shopping, because the real food is in the perimeter. You have like the veggies, the fruits, the nuts, the seeds, depending on which store you go to, of course. So yeah, it's very important to realize that you're not eating junk food, you're eating junk. He addresses the dangers of GMOs, as well as their legislative protection via the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act. This was passed in 2014. Thought that was very interesting. I didn't know that. And he also addressed common myths around like the plant-based diet, like your need for meat-based protein and dairy-based calcium, which is always something people bring up. I remember when I stopped eating dairy, that was always an issue when I told people that, because they're like, well, how do you get your calcium? I have never been low on calcium. I've almost been not eating dairy for almost 10 years, and I've never had an issue with my calcium or actually with my iron levels or anything like that. Now, vitamin D was an issue, but so, and then I live in the northern hemisphere, very north. Calcium, you can find other sources. veggie sources for calcium and a lot of dark leafy green vegetables. Even with the protein, there's also veggie-based protein as well. Now, as far as like the absorption of that and everything, I would have to read some more studies, but he did address some things in that as well, which I thought was interesting. So in the protein discussion he was talking about how we don't need as much protein as we often think, which I wouldn't doubt that, but again, it's studies I have to read. I want to look up a little bit more on this. But he was talking about how a lot of the amino acids we have, our bodies produce. There's only a few that we don't produce that we have to consume. And I think he was also differentiating between protein, which is macro, and then amino acids, which are the components that make up proteins. Again, the emphasis is more on a healthy lifestyle than jumping on a diet fad, which is very important. You don't just, because there's been a million diet fads. There's been like the Atkins diet, there's the keto diet, there's the vegan diet, there's the vegetarian diet. There's so many diets. There's like carnivore diets now. So the focus should not be on the diet itself as a fad or popular thing to do at the time, because that's a very temporary solution. When you focus on lifestyle, which the etymology of diet is actually, I think it's dieta, from the Greek, means a way of life. So you need to focus on lifestyle. It's a more permanent, more sustainable solution to health, not just going on a diet. Because at the same time, most time people go on diets and only last for maybe a few weeks, maybe a couple months, and then they switch back and they revert to their old diet because that is their lifestyle. They haven't changed their life around the way they eat. And he also discussed the lack of sustainability in our farming practices, which I love that he said something about that, because again, it's one system that affects the ecosystem. So we, in our farming practices, in this country in particular, I can't speak of others, we have led to soils that are nutrient depleted, right? We use a lot of fertilizers, we use a lot of pesticides, we do a lot of monocropping. I mean, monocropping, for anybody who doesn't know, is farming to where you're literally planting the same single species of plant over and over again. So you'll see just like fields of corn, you'll see fields of soybeans. It's all one crop. And we do this over and over again. Now, with each plant, it has its own strengths, its own weaknesses, its own things that it takes from the soil, its own things that it produces and gives back to the soil. So when you just have one plant that you're planting all the time in these massive plots of land, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to kill it. It's almost like you eating just potatoes for the rest of your life. Like, you can't, as nice as that sounds, as good as that sounds, you can't just eat potatoes, right? So it's bad for the earth as well. She needs biodiversity. That's why when you go into the woods, you see everything. You see every type of tree. You see every type of weed, every type of bush. You see, a bunch of different types of mushrooms and animals and insects. She needs biodiversity. You need a little bit of everything to keep the health of the planet, and we don't do that in our farming practices, which are leading to depletion of our soils, which leads to depletion of the nutrients in our foods. So he addresses that. He also says that he quoted a study by Dr. Rebecca Dunnings that was done in the mid-1990s, and it had showed that in order to get the same amount of iron you would have gotten from an apple in 1950, it would require you to eat 26 apples in 1998, which I thought was very interesting. So I haven't done a whole lot of research on this yet. I think I read maybe one study on it, And then there's also a documentary that I thought was very interesting on this. It's called Industry Scandal: The Loss of Nutrients. Go and watch that when you get a chance. Some of it's in French. I think a lot of it's in French, but there's subtitles, so get over it. You'll be fine. So that was interesting. So besides the chemicals that we're using, because a lot of people speak on the pesticides and fertilizers and everything that we're spraying on the plants, we don't even think about the practices themselves and how we're killing the earth, thereby killing ourselves. We don't even allow the land to rest, which is very much so not common practice, but the earth needs to rest just the same as everything, like as above, so below. Same type of concepts applied to us apply to Mother Earth. So let's see what else. Which I still have to go read Dr. Dunning's study, which was, I'm going to do that. It's very interesting. So now I'm on the disagreement side of things. The things that I disagree with this book, which I guess this first part isn't really a disagreement. I just think it could be written a little bit better. I think that there were some inconsistencies and speculations that weakened some of his points, in my opinion. So in the first part of the book, he actually stated that you will not find a reference section for studies in this book because although studies have had utility, the vast majority of them are biased and none of them have advanced us towards an actual cure. In studying the world's healthiest populations, none of these populations use studies to guide their personal health. I get what he's saying. I understand there are uses for studies. However, and I understand even that they're biased. However, if we're being honest, a lot of things come with bias. I mean, if they're coming from humans, they're going to be a little bit skewed. So even his book is biased, right? He is a proponent and takes part in strict veganism. But, which isn't a bad thing, and I'm not downing veganism. I think it's a beautiful thing for people who need it. Now, I've met people and seen people that veganism doesn't work for them. Like, it actually not only makes them look, but feel very depleted. So, I think we all come from different backgrounds, different cultures. Each of our bodies are different. So, what we need are going to be different. Now, poison is poison. Again, back to the junk food thing. There aren't some people that need poison and other people that don't, unless you some sort of alien. If you are, raise your hand, let me know. But yeah, you don't. Poison is a different subject. But as far as like how you're eating, that's very individual. So regardless though, yes, studies are biased. A good study, actually, if you read it, will tell you the different biases that come with the study and the different limitations. That's something that you have to take into account. Now, I am a proponent of people going out and finding studies, reading studies. I think that's important, again, for learning, for education, but then also to sharpen your critical thinking skills. You have things, everything has a bias, whether it's, social media, mainstream media, you just talking to your friends. Everybody has their own perspectives, their own views. Intelligently, you should be able to use your own critical thinking skills to like compare and contrast notes to say, yeah, this has some valid points. However, because due to these limitations, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt, this, that, and the third. But to just totally say like, oh, well, health is not based off of studies, I disagree with, because if we didn't have the studies, how would you even know that we need something called vitamin D? You do the research, you do the studies, you do the experiments to even find these different components. How would you even know about protein? How would you know about different things in the body without studies? You have to study in order to learn, in order to know about different things and how they work. So don't base your entire life on one study. However, you can use them to support your premise. You can use them to support what you're doing or even negate what you're doing. That's great. You're learning. It's supposed to be a learning process. So that's just something that I disagree with on that, you can use studies. He uses studies in the book. Obviously, I just read one from Dr. Dunning's. So he uses studies, he just didn't want to reference them for his own purposes. And then also just some of the unfounded claims that I had seen, which had prompted me to look things up, so I'm very grateful for that. He had discussed that the stomach simultaneously metabolizes using both acidic and alkaline digestive juices. I don't know where he got that from because the stomach has stomach acid. So I didn't know if he was talking about maybe the alkaline juices that are produced in saliva or in the pancreas. I wasn't sure where he was coming from. And then he also used Kirlian photographs to support his premise that organic foods display the highest energy levels versus the cooked and processed foods that give off a dull vibratory signature, which was interesting. So just to kind of tell about, you probably can honestly look Kirlian photographs up, but apparently it's something that came out years ago. It's a type of photography that uses kind of like an electrical charge, and when you take the photograph, it shows like an energetic aura around the object. So his point is that if the aura is stronger, then it's healthier for you. I don't know where he got that, or like I couldn't find a study on that, so I was a little bit confused. It doesn't sound like Kirlian photography was supposed to have applications in health or anything like that, so that was a very loose correlation. I don't know. That was a little bit sketchy for me. That was pretty much my main disagreements, but again, that's not to say that the book isn't good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very helpful. He actually gave me a new goal, because he was talking about how towards the end of the book, how he doesn't buy anything, whether it's a food, whether it's like skincare or beauty products or what have you. Not saying that he gets beauty products, but if he's buying any product, if it has over 5 ingredients in it, he leaves it on the shelf. And I was like, So that's a whole new goal for me. That's major goals. Is it something that I'm going to get to this year? Probably not yet. But yeah, I don't know how he does that with like toothpaste. Like I use makeup, sparingly, but I use makeup, hair products, like yeah. So I'm getting there, but I love that goal. He also had inspired me to go back and try veganism, because again, I did try veganism a few years ago. It was only for like 3 months. So it wasn't a super long time, but it just wasn't working for me at the time. Yeah, so a lot of good stuff, a lot of things to consider, regardless of things that I agree with or inconsistencies. And again, I think it's important to read from sources that aren't big pharma approved. Again, I love what Dr. Price stands for. I love how he has and continues to inspire people to take responsibility of their own health, to learn more about their own health, to be an advocate for their own health, which is a major passion of mine. I always tell people that you need to advocate for your own health, because it is your body and it is your responsibility. Even when you go into the doctor's office, you should be partnered with your doctor. Your doctor is not your God. Your doctor is not your king. You should be partnered with your doctor to ask questions, to learn about your health, to learn about your body, and to make the decisions that are right for you. So use your doctor as a resource. So I do appreciate him from that standpoint, and I love, love, love what he does. He inspires me. So, mad respect to him, and I aspire to do the same. I like to end my book reviews with just like 5 quotes from the books that I read that I loved. So, I'll give you a few. I say lifestyle as opposed to diet because diets are trendy and unsustainable. So when we support nutritional and hygiene products that are designed for bottom lines and not for natural health, we support the corrupt system that says it's okay to spray our foods with pesticides, replace standard organic foods with genetically modified foodstuffs, and put chemicals that increase shelf life of products but reduce human lifespan. The produce section is the only section that would constitute true food, and even many of these choices are quickly becoming questionable. So there was no such thing as junk food. There's junk and then there's food. In 2010, the entire nation of Haiti was rocked by a catastrophic 7.0 magnitude earthquake. In response, Monsanto sent 475 tons of GMO corn and vegetable seed. In a remarkable display of unity and protest, 10,000 Haitian farmers gathered to burn the 475 tons of GMO seeds. What he or she invests nutritionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually, anything that we consume that isn't natural and nourishing is a toxin. And I'll leave y'all with that. So thank you for staying throughout the whole video. If you stayed, make sure to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, comment. I want to hear what y'all think. If you've read this book, I definitely want to hear what you think. What's your take on it? If you haven't yet, just let me know if I inspired you to check it out. Hopefully, if Dr. Bobby Price sees this, he doesn't take any offenses to my disagreements. It's all out of love. Y'all have a great afternoon, evening, or morning, whichever it is for you, and I will see you in the next one. Later, loves.